Hello, Anaplan Live, and welcome to our final segment for day one. And this is the segment that you've all been waiting for. This is the build along in the new UX. So before we get started, I hope you have all done your pre-work and are ready to build along. So open up your model and let's dive right in. We're going to roll up our sleeves today and show you how quickly and easy it is to build pages in the new UX. And as our segment title says, it's really not that scary. You can even do this if you're not an experienced model builder. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is you should all have your Anaplan Launchpad page open. And what we're going to do is we're going to navigate to My Home. And the way to do this is if you see this hamburger menu in the top left, we're going to just go ahead and click that and then just navigate right to where it says Home. From your home page, you'll see all the models that you have access to. And today, one of the models that I'm going to be using is one you should all be familiar with. It's the Financial Planning and Analysis model from that amazing Level 1 model building course. So today, we're going to be building personal pages that are called My Pages. And you'll see that we actually have things called apps, which are available to everyone in the organization. But for My Pages, these are going to be for just you. So what I want you to do is there's two different ways you can navigate. The first one is you see right next to me. You can just go ahead and click on the My Pages. Or else we have another drop down here in the left, and you can just go ahead and select My Pages. So here we can see My Pages. If you haven't built any personal pages yet, your screen should look just like mine, so that's completely normal and don't worry. In the next few minutes, we're going to replace two of the classic dashboards that are included in the Level 1 financial planning model with pages that we're going to build right here in the new UX. So here we go. You're going to have us build along with you using your copy of the model. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to replace the country margin classic dashboard with a similar page in the new UX. So here you can see this is what our classic dashboard looks like. And when we're ready, I want you to go ahead and click the Create New Page in the bottom right here where it says Create a Personal Page. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by building a board. And when we're ready, we just want to make sure that you've selected Board. And we're going to start by giving this board a name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name this one the Country Margin Board. And I want to put in the word board there just to make sure that we're not confusing it with our dashboard from earlier. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to navigate to the workspace that we're working in. And here you'll see a list of all the workspaces that you've been added to. Next, we want to find the model that we're going to be using. And if you're kind of a big deal like myself, you belong to a lot of models. So what you can do is rather than scroll through it, you can just go ahead and type in the name. So I'm going to type in Level 1. I'm going to spell it correctly, and then I'm going to go ahead and just click on the model that I have right here. So once you've had your model selected, again, you might have yours named a little bit differently based off of the one that you've been using, or if you downloaded a fresh one, you'll see that it'll be that 1.5. You might even see some parentheses afterwards based off of the number. But once you have your model selected, we're ready to go ahead and hit Create. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is you can see we're going to add cards. In the top right over there, you'll see the different types of cards. And we're going to stick with just two different types today and some text. But when we're done, we're going to show you a link to some training if you want to go ahead and try some of the other functionality that we have in there. But for this one, we're going to go ahead and take and create a grid. Now, there's two ways you can do this. You can just go ahead and click it and give it the old drag over and drop it. Or if you want, give it a double click, and you'll see that it's going to go ahead and pop right up there at the top. So once we have our card in there, we're ready to go ahead and configure it. We're going to go ahead and click Configure Grid. Now we've entered Card Designer. And in the left-hand panel, we'll see a list of all the modules in the source model. And you can choose to use a data view that is already created and saved within this model itself, or you can set up a custom view within the new UX. We're going to be doing both for this demonstration. Now we've already created a saved module view for this grid, so we're going to click Module Views. Again, you'll see that we do have the ability to scroll or search. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and search for the one that we've used in our Rep 01 country margin report. And again, I could just type in rep, narrow it down, and click my country margin report. And then from here, you'll see this is the list of saved views that we have. We're going to go ahead and click on the one that says Grid DB. Now that we have this, we'll get a little bit of a preview of it. Once you're ready, we're going to go ahead and click Next. So I'm going to give you just a few seconds here to make sure you find it. Again, the one that we're looking for is that Rep 01 country margin report. Once we're ready, let's click Next. So within here, this is different ways that you can actually customize your view. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start off by giving it a title. So over here in the top left where it says title, I want you to go ahead and type it. And for us, we're going to call this one the summary margin by year. Okay. Next, you'll see the description field. So for those of you that are familiar with tooltips, this is going to be very similar to in the classic dashboards. So for this demonstration, what I will do is I'm actually going to type in, this is where the description shows up. So later on when we actually view it, we'll see where the description shows up. The next thing you'll see below is we have a link to a page, which we'll discuss a little bit later on. We also have allow editing, and then you can see below that is the column of time. Now, when allow and editing toggle is switched on, end users are allowed to enter or edit data in the cells of the grid. So as long as they're otherwise model permission to be in there, they can do that. Now the new UX will actually respect any sort of security that you have put on before. So for example, if an end user was not able to edit in here, this allow editing is not going to allow them to. This is just another layer of security that we have on top of that. We're not going to get into any of the different filters down here within the hierarchy, but again, I'm going to request that when you're done and you've seen how easy it is, go ahead into the Learning Center, take some of the great training that we have in there, and you'll see every single feature and functionality here discussed. So what we're going to do next is we're going to look up at the top right over here, and what we have here are these are our context selectors. Now, context selectors will automatically be added to the overall page based off the dimensions used on the cards there. So you can see that we have context selectors for individual cards here in the card designer. By default, they will not display on the card itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the one here that says all products. And then from there, we can see that we have different options. You can see that it's show on card is off. You might also see the words label. Again, very much so similar to what we had in our classic, that you can have it as a label, which means they'll be able to see which context selector is selected, but they will not be able to change it. And then below that, you'll see the ability to have it as a selector. So with the all products, we're going to go ahead and click to hit it as a selector. And then once we have it hit as a selector, we're going to go ahead and hit apply. Okay, now that we're ready, at the bottom right, we can choose to go ahead and add this card to our page. So one of the things that you'll see is in the top right, we have the ability to publish. Think of this as your save, and we always want to just remember to keep saving as we're moving along. So I'm going to go ahead and hit publish. To get back into designer mode, just click the edit icon. You'll notice that it's right here and it looks exactly like a pencil. So now that we've added a grid, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add a chart. So previously I went and I double clicked and you can see that it went in there. This time I'm going to give it the old drag and drop. Now, I can choose to put it below, or if I wanted to, I can put it to the side here and it will actually adjust. So we have a lot of space there with our numbers, so I'm going to actually add it to the side here. And you'll see that it'll move that over into the grid to just kind of make space automatically for it. The same way that once we added our grid, we clicked our configure, we're going to do that again, but this time we're going to hit configure chart. Following that same line of once you hit configure, you're going to want to choose where you're actually pulling in your materials from. So in this case, if you remember, what we're going to do is we're going to use that rep01 margin report module again. But this time where we click the grid saved view, we're going to go ahead and click the chart saved view. So I'm going to scroll down. Here is that rep01 country margin report. And you can see this is very much so similar because we've already added this one earlier. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to set up this view for the chart that we want to have. And in this case, we're going to be using a pie chart. So you might remember that we have a pivot icon in our classic. We also have the pivot icon here as well. And what we want to do is we want to set up our dimensions so that we can get it ready to actually publish our chart. So once you've located your pivot, click pivot, and then the same line of thought is going to be traveled in from before. So anything that we want in a chart that we only want to see one of, we're going to move it up to a context selector. So for example, if I only wanted to look at one of the items within time, I'm going to drag that up to a context selector. If I wanted to look at one line item at a time, I can put that up there. For our example, what I want you to do is let's take the product family. And in this case, we're going to move our product family down into rows. And then the other thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure we have time and line items as the context selectors in there. So I'm going to give you a few seconds here to go ahead and get caught up. In the meantime, what this will do, by having our countries, by having our time, and by having our line items in as context selectors, the end users will be allowed to look at that chart for different countries, for different time, and also for the different line items. So this chart will automatically adjust to whatever we have selected in there. Okay, I hope everyone has got all of their dimensions set up. Remember, we want to have the G2 country, time, and line items. And don't worry about the order of those. As long as they're in that context selector, you'll be fine. And then finally, just in the rows, we want to have our product family. Once we're ready, I want you to go ahead and click Next. Now from here, one of the things that you're going to notice is this chart doesn't look very impressive. And that's because the data is not set up to be a line chart. So instead, let's switch that chart type to make it a pie chart. So if you look over towards the left, you're going to go ahead and see the chart type. Just use that drop down and let's select a pie chart. Now, one of the things you're going to notice here is because we have that all products selected, that's going to take up half of it because it is one of our totals. So when you see things like this, it's just as easy to go back and fix your charts. No longer do you have to go back, switch your modules. This is so simple that we can just hit that back button and adjust what we have selected in this chart. Click back in the bottom right corner. Now, one of the things we're going to want to do is we're going to want to hide that all products. So if you look where I have my mouse in the top right, we see a little bit of an eye icon, and that's going to be where we choose to either show or hide. And in this case, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to hide that summary for our chart. So what you can do is we're going to click on the dimension that we want to adjust, in this case our product 1 families, and then we'll see all the different options. Now here within the levels, what I want to do is I want to deselect that P1 product family summaries. So that's going to get rid of that all products line that we see down there. Once we have that done, just go ahead and hit apply, and you'll notice that as soon as I hit apply, that all products is going to be gone. All right, now we're ready to go ahead and move this over. So let's move on to the next step and hit next. You'll see that it kept our setting from earlier that we selected as a pie chart. We can even change the colors. Personally, I'm not a big fan of this yellow. I'm going to go ahead and move it over into a nice green in here. And you can customize this any way that you want to have it for the colors that you want to have on your chart. So, looks like we're ready. We've got our title. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and remove that top heading that says Repo 1. Instead, I want to just call it the country margin report. And then with the description on this one, we're going to go ahead and leave that one blank. Now that we're ready, in the bottom right, you'll see Add. Let's just go ahead and click Add. Isn't that beautiful? Let's keep in mind that we want to save this, but we don't see a save. Instead, we got to look for that Publish button. So let's click Publish to make sure that we save our work. You can see that if we want to change the layout of the board at this point, maybe we want to make this chart a little bit bigger. One of the things that we can do is we can actually adjust the sizing in here. So we have it as saved. Remember, anytime we want to make any sort of change, we want to get back into that designer mode. And we're going to use that icon that looks like a pencil. So just to keep reminding you, as you're building out, as you're adding new cards, adding new grids, make sure to hit publish. And then when you're ready to, you can go and edit that again by just clicking on the pencil icon. So in this case, you'll notice I can drag if I decide I wanted to move my chart. That same grid layout where it'll adjust and move over is going to apply. So now that we're ready here, I'm going to just drag that down. And what you'll notice is as I get my mouse to a point of the bottom of the card, if I want to expand that, I can just click on that and drag it down. This is going to make my chart a little bit easier to read. So the last thing we're going to want to do before we move on to this board is let's add some text to it. At this point, we should be a little familiar with it. In order to add a card, you can just drag and drop, or if you want, you can double click. In this case, I'm going to just drag it up to the top here and place it above. Now that we're ready, we can add some text. And I'm going to go ahead and assume that we can figure out at this point that that configure text button is going to allow us to do just that. We can enter our text by typing it here. I don't expect you to follow along and try to type out everything that we had in the instructions earlier. At any point, if you want to go back and pretty these up by adding that, you can. But for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm just going to go ahead and write, this is where we entered that text. If we want, we can put a title, the same thing with the description. We can also make adjustments to the text. So I'm going to highlight our text here. And then you should see the idea of our heading 1, heading 2. These are very similar to what we've done in our classic. We're just going ahead and add any different one. You can do instructions and heading 1. What I recommend is so much of this learning the new UX comes into just going and exploring the different options. So if you're falling a little bit behind or you might have stopped something, by all means, it's going to be recorded. You can go back to it, but take a few minutes, just explore it. Look at what the different options are. It's really not that overwhelming. And on top of it, it's just a great way to become more comfortable with building in the new UX. So I'm going to stick with the heading 1 because I like a big text and I cannot lie. So we're going to go ahead and keep it like that. Once we're ready, the same way that we've added different cards, we're going to hit that add button in the bottom right. You can see, there we have. All done. It was that easy. Before we try to get excited and go and high five everybody that we know, remember to hit that publish button. That's very much like your save. So now that I'm ready, I'm going to go ahead and click that publish in the top right. There we go. So before we move on and start building anything, let's test a few things out. Now, earlier you remember we added in the description into that box, and I said it was very similar to our tooltips. And that little blue icon with an eye, which is very much so what you would think of for information, as your end users can go into there, as they hover over it, you'll see this is where the description shows up. So if you want to write notes, maybe give a little bit more context and you don't necessarily want to add a text tile in there, this is going to be a good way for you to get information over to your end users. All right, you'll remember that we have our different context selectors here. So right now I'm currently looking at all products for the different areas. If I wanted to change that, if I wanted to look at my summary revenue, my cost of sales for chocolates, I can just click on the chocolates there. You'll see that we have a little refresh icon. You also notice that little line going across there. That's going to mean that it's going to update and show us that data. Very much so if you remember when we built out our chart. We added different context selectors as far as time. So right now we're currently looking at FY20. If I want to look at FY19, there's 2 different ways I can do it. The first one, just using that context selector up at the top, go ahead and select the FY19, and you'll see that this is going to update. The other thing that we have on is that idea of synchronized selection, very much so similar to what we had in the past. So as I click on the FY21, you'll notice that it's also updating and switching to the FY21 within our chart. And a good indicator, you can see here FY21, watch what happens when I select FY19 here. You can see that refresh going over, and you'll see that that now is going to show us that we're looking at FY19 data. All right, let's move on and we'll create another page. Using the navigation menu on the top left here, you can see we're going to navigate back to My Pages. So right here, you can also navigate back using this, or we can just go ahead and select My Pages. We've done that before. I'm going to show you this other way of navigating. This looks a little bit different than the last time we were there because now we have saved and published that one in there. All right, so let's create another page. In the top right, you'll see where it says create a page. And when we click it, it's going to create a page. Let's do that. Last time we went and built out a board. This time we're going to switch it up and we're going to select a worksheet. Now, very much so similar to what we did last time, where we had to do the page name, the workspace, and the model. We're going to do that same thing again. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change my page name. And for this one, what we're going to do is we're going to actually create the volumes entry. When you're ready, let's select a worksheet, and then under the page name, I want you to type in volume entries. In this case, you'll notice that it's saved my information from before. So it has the correct workspace that I need. It also has the correct model. If you needed to, you can just go ahead and select those different options. Make sure you're in the right workspace, the model that we were working for before, and make sure that you're using the selected model that we used. Now that we're ready, let's go ahead and click that create button. this screen is going to look a little bit different. So you'll notice that we have some different features. We have our main primary grid over on the left, and on the top right we'll see that we have quick links and additional insights. We're not going to worry about the links here, but later on what we'll do is we'll add some cards to give us some additional insights into the data that we're showing in our primary grid. Following that same idea, we're going to select our configuring our grid to just choose which modules we want to pull in from. So this time we want to use one of our saved views. So we're going to select module views. And in this time, I'm going to type in our Rev02 volume inputs. The saved view that we want to use is that future periods. Now that we've selected it, we got our preview, but we're ready to move on, so we're going to click Next. At this point, you'll see that there's the users can edit. This is a little bit different, that it's not allowing them to edit the actual data in there. This is more so on the editing the permissions of the line item names or list names. So this will follow the security that's set up in your model. We're not going to worry about it for this time. The same thing with our filters. If you want more information on that, please visit the course afterwards. But now that we're ready, we're going to click Update. Once you click Update, you'll see that the primary grid has been added to your worksheet. You'll also notice that we can add in additional insights, and you would just follow the same process that we used earlier when we were bringing in those different cards in there. So for now, we're going to leave it like this, and then what we're going to do is, following that save, we're going to click to publish this time. Okay, we've hit publish. Now, if we wanted to, we can add in those additional insights. If we wanted to bring in text, we want to put in a chart, maybe even one of those new KPI cards that's very exciting, we can do all that. But for this demonstration, we're going to cut ourselves off right here. And what we're going to do is, last thing I want to do is I just want to exit designer mode. This is going to bring us back to our pages that we can see here. In the top left, I'm going to select the My Pages. And I'm actually going to go back to the My Pages so we can see both of them that are completed. And at any point, if I wanted to, I can jump back into those, or I can create a new page. There's a lot more that goes into working with the new UX, and we offer a great new on-demand new UX training course. You can find it in the Anaplan Learning Center that's located within the community. That wasn't that scary at all, so please check out the Learning Center for more training, and thanks for watching.